disclosed it, but we put it into what we embodied it, we used it, and then we took our product and we displayed it at a national seminar. What we didn't know is that started a 1-year counter. 1 year. We now had 1 year to file for a patent, and we had no idea. We had no idea that was the case. And so we completely just lost that. We lost that whole thing. We still have the technology, obviously, but we lost that whole patent. So if you use something, and inside of one of your products, that's called embodiment, and if you then show that in some public forum, that starts a 1 year counter. And at the end of that year, your own thing is kind of like prior art. I mean, you can't have it. You can't have it anymore. You don't get the patent. No one gets the patent.
And that's in the States. In Europe, as soon as you disclose it.
Oh yeah, it's like 0 time. We don't even.
As soon as you disclose it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you have to kind of get your
absolute novelty. It's like almost all the countries have it. There's a few with like 6-month grace periods, but ours is a year, and it's about the longest.
So that messes up your PCT thing then? Is that what that does?
If you disclose it before you
that's
put
what I mean.
PCT in place, you're screwed.
Then,
Okay.
yeah, if the country doesn't have any grace period, then yeah.
Okay, wow, no grace period. Okay, I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Can you repeat that?
Oh, most of the countries in the world insist on absolute novelty, which means you have to have filed, at least in your initial country, and met all the deadlines for, the follow-on filings. It's like before you did your first public disclosure. Now, if you showed it to some people under an NDA, that's a good way to do betas and things like that. Some people manage to convince judges that, well, we had to do an experiment and there was no way to do it without going out in public. Like if it's an airplane, you gotta go, you gotta see if it flies or not. And so yeah, there's some they make some allowances like that. But yeah, generally you have to file before you let anybody see it without an obligation to confidentiality.
And the disclosure is the result, not the patentable stuff. So you're not showing them how you're doing encryption, but you're showing them the device and just showing them the
that's called the embodiment. That's called the embodiment. If you show them an embodiment, if you show them something that has that process embedded into it in some way, then that's disclosure, even though you didn't reveal the process. That's what I didn't know.
Well, that's sort of the hard-nosed, very hard-nosed, very most pessimistic end of things.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, if people can't see the invention, like it's a process on a chip, and the chip is on a board, and the board is in a device, and all you see is the device, then it's not necessarily a disclosure. But most attorneys just want to be totally on the safe side, and so they'll just say, keep it under wraps until then.
Well,
file first.
Loopholes in NDA, right? Put a non-disclosure in place.
So here's the thing. We know a guy. He ended up selling his patent for $12 million. So that was pretty good for a patent. It was an RFID-based one, inside gaming chips. They call it John French, right? So anyway, but he had a situation when he was doing all this, of course, that he got, of course, sued for, what do they do, for wrongful patent, basically. They tried to invalidate his patent. And one of their invalidations was that they said, so when you were working on this, did you make sketches? Yeah, I made sketches. Did you throw them in the wastebasket? Yes, I did. Did you take those out to the garbage can? Yes. Well, that's public disclosure. And that was, but he had to fight that. I mean, that's an example, though. It's like, okay, so a piece of paper went outside. Now it's public. You disclosed it for the world. Any dumpster divers are going to know about it.
Unusual.
Yeah, but because it was a $12 million deal, they spent a lot trying to invalidate him. And then they ended up actually not buying. It's a funny story. So they ended up not buying his patent at all, and then their competitor bought the patent for $12 million, and then forced that company to then license from them all 12 million of it in order for them to use it. So, so that company ended up out 12 million. Plus, they didn't own the patent; they just had a license to it. Rather than ailing him. So yeah, it's pretty.
Just as a comment.
Go ahead.
Question here,
Sure.
Hopefully not getting sidetracked.
No, that's fine.
You seem to think that the change, which was largely driven by the need to synchronize for some reason with other countries, you actually believe that the first to file is a better system than the first to invent?
I think it's much cleaner. It's much cleaner from a discovery of prior art standpoint, because now you know that, hey, I filed, that sets my priority on it, where before that didn't set any real priority on it.
I think it puts small companies and patents.
Does it make them worse in some funny way?
Massive disadvantage.
Oh, well, tell me about that, because there probably is some loophole-y thing that makes it worse, so tell me what that is.
Well, to file a provisional costs you very little money, but you have 1 year, actually technically 10 months to file the full-blown patent.
Okay.
And if you have 5 or 10 patents, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, which most, early entrepreneurs cannot have possibly.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is it forces them to have to file earlier than they would have liked to have
Right.
done,
When they
and
can't.
when they don't have enough money to really do it.
And if they don't have the money to follow
Yeah.
up within that year,
Okay.
then it becomes public domain.
I guess that's true. I'd never thought about doing that many
Well, that's all
filings
true,
that
but
quick.
the Patent Office did roll out a bunch of new programs when they enacted this first-to-file thing, just to help the smaller, individual inventors and small companies. There's, small entities always had like a bunch of the fees cut in half.
Yeah.
And now there's such a thing as a micro entity, and I can't figure out how they did that. It's like, your income has to be below a certain threshold, and you can't have like 4 or more patents, which I think is ridiculous because a lot of startups are like recidivist patentees, It's like people who get laid off and they have this other great idea. But yeah, they also there are pro bono patent projects in every state. California's had one for about a year, and you have to come up with the patent fees, which are discounted if you're small and or poor. But the legal work, the drafting and stuff, which is usually the bigger bite, you can get a volunteer to do that. You have to apply through the federal government and, proof of poverty kind of thing. But yeah, that's available now. It didn't used to be available.
But I understand what you're saying. You're saying, that makes it really tough because it puts pressure on you to have to file for patents that you
Right.
don't have the money to pursue.
And this is not small change. I mean,
No, it's tons.
I've got 5 patents.
Yeah, the average cost
And it's
is
a
like,
minimum of $20K to get a patent in
Yeah.
the US. And then you have a very short period of time
Yep.
where you have to do the foreign filings or lose your right to that patent in Europe or China.
Yeah.
And forget Japan. Japan, the translation cost alone will cost you 20 grand.
yeah, I didn't even cover that part on here yet, but that's true. And then there's these translation fees, these yearly fees that somehow your software in Europe and in Japan seems to somehow need maintenance, and there's maintenance fees because apparently the little ones and zeros or the paper or something gets wrinkled, and I don't know what they're about. We have to pay every year for those
So
things.
the bottom line, you're talking 50 or 60 grand to get coverage in probably 2, 3, maybe 4 of the major markets where you're likely to be. And the fact that the United States, who literally invented the patent system,
Yeah.
would bow to Europe, which never liked the patent system, to me seems to be, you might as well just like knock off the first 3 amendments to the Bill of Rights.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the other wrinkle. That's a good point, though. I've only thought about doing one patent at a time. I guess because we're kind of small, so we've always kind of done one, see how it does, see if we can sell it, do another one, But we lucked out because we did a bunch for millions, and we just thought that was the pattern.
Other way is to reduce the fees to file in India, PCT application.
Oh, so that's one way to reduce your
So this is
fees?
the best way,
Yeah.
but you can save money.
Someone said South Korea works that way. Some people file in South
Perhaps
Korea because
South Korea is still
yeah.
costly, but
Yeah.
India is the best country.
And there's also something called the patent superhighway or something, or can you explain that briefly?
Oh yeah, that's if, so normally you file in one country and then when your deadline approaches, you file in all these other countries, so all these other countries are sort of behind your first country in the process. Well, if your patent happens to get some claims allowed in your first country, before the first office action in some other country, then you can just do this program and say, okay, I want patent prosecution highway, I've got these claims allowed in the US, can I get these claims allowed over by you? Now, there's a lot of catches with that too. It's like, because the examiners in the other country will still examine it in their own way. The EU, for example, I asked about the patent prosecution highway, and my EU counsel said that hardly ever cuts any ice because the European examination processes and stuff are so different. So, you're better off just not doing it because you got to pay a bunch of extra fees to apply for it, and it hardly ever works. So there's stuff like that.
So still he will get the priority date of that country. The first when the date of filing, he will get the priority date. And when priority date is there, everybody will be afraid to infringe the patent. So he will have the same protection which he will get by having the patent. So this is the best way to save money and get patent in that country. And if even it is not having the patent, other party will be afraid to infringe that, and nobody knows that when it will be granted in. But you must designate US and
You have to specify that when you're doing it.
so
Yeah.
this is the best way.
Yeah, I haven't tried any of that yet. We've been really
No, even-
simple so far, but
I
yeah.
think very few people have thought about it.
Yeah, cool.
File your primary.
Interesting.
Yes,
some
file
interesting-
a PCT application, that too.
Yeah.
PCT application designate US and other countries where you want that there is a.
Okay, well, very
chances
cool.
of it.
I'll-
And while
know
going in
about
the
that.
national phase, you will see that whether you should spend money or not.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
So my first patent, I filed both in the UK and I was based there. The first one I filed internationally, and it was very expensive. And the second one was a social media patent. And I made the decision to only file in the US on the basis that if you were a website wanting to use this kind of stuff, or a software vendor, you couldn't just do it for the rest of the world and not in the US. I just took the point of view that filing in the US is sufficient, cost me $20,000 like your patents, and that was it. And it seemed strategically and on a sort of cost-benefit basis to make a lot of sense just to file in the US, because when you're talking about international products, you can hardly ignore the US market. So I don't really think about that.
Yeah, we have not done a lot of PCTs lately. We've been mostly just doing the US. But I think that when we get our next round of funding, which hopefully will be happening this coming year, we'll probably do it everywhere again, just because it's a small fraction of what the whole picture is. But if you're a small startup, it's a ton of money. I mean, at one point we were spending $20,000 a month just on our patent stuff every month. Our company was. I mean, that's what it costs just to keep things going. And that doesn't count trademark infringements. I mean, if you think patents are bad, trademarks are much, much worse. If someone infringes on your patent, you don't have to do anything yet. You can just wait, and you can not tell them. You can wait and see if they get big and powerful, you know. But with a trademark, if you don't inform them that they've infringed, you lose your trademark. You are required to pursue it.
I'm pretty sure the same applies for patents.
No, it does not. You do not. You do not have to pursue.
If somebody is infringing and you know it, you can't.
No, you do not have to. You do not have to contact them. You don't have to do anything. You're not bound to that at all. Otherwise, you'd have to face, you know, the Facebooks and the Microsofts day one of your patent idea, and you just get killed. But trademarks, you do get killed. Yeah, we had to go after. One of ours was against Johnson & Johnson.